Okay, so we are here today with my friend Carly, who is going to tell us a little bit about who she is and a little bit about her story. So, Carly, we're going to start by just asking you um, who you are and where you come from.
Okay, so my name is Carly. I am 32 years old. I belong to First Baptist Church in Port Lavaca, and I grew up here. I have two girls here. One's a teenager, which is hard, and one is 8, which is hard. No, she just turned 9. And I have one son in heaven who would be 10 years old today.
Okay, so how was life growing up for you?
Very difficult. Um, my father is an addict. He still is today. And it was always just really hard with my parents as far as, my dad did a really good job at hiding things from us as far as not seeing a lot of it, but it was very obvious, when he was high, and it made it really hard with my parents and I think it made it really hard with my mom because she had to work to support us
Mm-hmm.
and was not in a good space for that and having to deal with it. So my childhood was very traumatic, very strained, and I had a lot of responsibilities on me to help take care of my siblings and everything.
Okay, so we met obviously through First Baptist, Port Lavaca. So tell me a little bit about what's the gap between how you were raised and how you came to know the Lord?
So I wasn't really raised. I say I wasn't. We didn't go to church often,
Hmm.
and we didn't go as a family. But the times that my dad was sober was when he was plugged into Faith Family in Victoria. And so I would go to church with him a lot, and
Interesting.
he would go to the singles, um, like on Wednesday nights and stuff. They had a big singles group.
Hmm.
And so for the times that my dad was the longest sober periods of time was when he was going to church, and I would go to church with him every Sunday, and that I could in Victoria. And I was old enough to drive then because I remember driving to meet him
Hmm.
at church sometimes. And then also my Aunt Josie, who babysat us when we were kids, um, she's very Christian, but she was Pentecostal, I think. So I kind of had good and bad memories with that because I would remember going to her church the times that she took us to church I guess when she had us on a Sunday, um, and the church would like speak in tongues,
Hmm.
so it was like scary as a kid, not knowing what was going on, but I realize now, that was like her faith in some members of the church. That's how they worshiped,
Hmm.
and we all do it differently. But definitely, she was a big part of my faith as a child. That was my only exposure.
So what about so your dad encouraged you, and then what do you think it was about them or her in particular that kind of you looked up to her in that kind of way?
She's like the most Christian woman. She's so saintly. Like, she was always just very like giving of her time, never cared about any kind of fancy material things.
Hmm.
And it was every answer she ever gave was, you need to pray on it. We're going to pray together. I'm praying for you. And, like different things about fear and stuff. It was just always, she walked the walk
Hmm.
of what it is to be a Christian. It wasn't just the scriptures hanging on the wall. There wasn't hardly any scriptures, crosses and stuff, but it wasn't like a lot of that. It was that she just really lived a life of being really selfless
Hmm.
and serving to everyone around her.
Yeah. And I love that you said that your dad just kind of when he was going consistently that he, was better. So I
Hmm.
love to make that connection because it's like, well, how do you think that that happens? You know?
Yeah.
So,
I still try to get into church today, but hasn't worked yet.
well, but look at the tables that are turned, right? Because it's like,
Mhm.
it was him that kind of set that example, and now you're trying to do it for him. So that's kind of
Yeah.
awesome. So what do you feel like kind of really in your adult life? Was there something that had happened to you that you really felt like the Lord was there? Like, was it like one of the darkest moments? Was it a happy moment? What was it about you and your adult life? Because right when we're children, we just kind of roll with the flow of our parents. But when we become adults, no one's forcing you to go to church at this point. So was there something that happened in your life that you felt called back to church to learn your own type of faith?
Um, I feel like I came to my belief that I have now, my faith, kicking and screaming.
Mm-hmm.
um, I've shared with you that I lost my son at 18 weeks pregnant, and it was just a very, very dark time, years of really hard depression.
Mm-hmm.
And still to this day, it's 10 years and it's hard. But really, I ended up getting it more into my faith through Hope Mommies. And I was just searching for like a retreat whenever I was really depressed with my son, like a mom's retreat for grief
Mm-hmm.
support.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across on the Google search just Hope Mommies, and it was in Texas. And there was this retreat that was happening that in the next month. And I was like, wow. But I almost didn't go because it was a Christian group. And I was really angry at God. And I was like, I don't want to hear what these people have to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I went ahead and like did the application, and they said unfortunately they were full that year, because they were at that time only doing one retreat a year. And they would let me know if a spot came open, but if not, I would have to go the following. And so I didn't think about it for a year, and then I got an email about it being available, and I was still absolutely miserable. So I just, thought that I couldn't hurt any worse than I already am.
Mm-hmm.
So I just decided to go, and I went by myself. I didn't have a friend or anything with me. And it was amazing, exactly what I needed. But I will say the moment that I was like, because in my grief, I never felt like God was there listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I got placed with this, we got sectioned off into like different little small groups
Mm-hmm.
because this retreat's like 200 plus people, maybe. And so we get into these groups, and they did this wall of like your baby pictures, and it was like a timeline of just your baby's picture and everybody near. In this group that I got put into, my small group leader, her daughter, she lost her daughter either 2 days before or 2 days after Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just weird that coming full circle, where it was like I felt like I was completely alone in my grief.
Mm-hmm.
That, and she was all the way from Indianapolis, like
Oh, wow.
so far away.
Yeah.
And then she ends up in this retreat in Texas in my small group leader. And here we are talking about my son and her daughter, Macy. And it was like we thought we were so alone, and yet we were experiencing the same thing, and we come together. I think I went on that retreat 4 years after losing Nixon.
Hmm.
So it was a long time. And then it was like, wow, that's amazing that it ended up like that God put us there at the same
I was
time.
going to say, it's like God just kind of orchestrated that for you guys.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
Hmm.
So what do you feel like, so he met you in your struggle is what?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
tell me a little bit more about like what Hope Mommies is.
It is a group for infant and pregnancy loss.
Mm,
So there's some moms there that lost their 1-year-old baby. You know, I had one mom that
mm,
I was there and her baby drowned. And then there's others that lost, right away at 4, 5, 6 weeks pregnant, where you just find out it's very early miscarriage. There's ones that, you deliver at full term baby and it's an umbilical cord wrap.
mm,
And just so many things can go wrong. And so we say in that group, like, it's the most amazing group that you never want to be a part of
mm-hmm.
because,
Right.
obviously the reason we're there is this terrible, tragic thing
Right.
of losing your children. And, but being there with other moms, and there's like, at the every evening that you're there on this retreat, we do like a group worship after dinner. And like the first retreat I went to, I've been on 3. The first one was obviously the most moving to me because I was the most raw, the most
Right.
hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something really incredible about women who have lost their children, a lot of them multiple children, that are still choosing to worship God and praising in worship through their pain. It's a lot. It's really emotional to be there. I've never experienced anything like it before or since. But and I tell all my moms, Hope Mommies, that, are on the fence about going, because I was like, you can't hurt any worse.
Right.
Now I feel like I'm like superwoman in that. I mean, what can you really ever do or say to me? I've already been through the worst,
Right.
which is losing your child.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's just nothing else like it,
Right. And now you have
of
this
worship their
community.
pain.
Yeah, now you have this community of women that have just gone through the same thing, that it's like, and that's just right where God meets you. That is like, and so from there,
Yeah.
did you just like, so what got you into going to church and growing in, your friendship with the community?
So it was that retreat because I wasn't really going. I would go to church kind of periodically, not like holidays and stuff. It's just like there's sometimes that I was like, okay, I want to go to church, but I hadn't really found a church. And on that retreat, I was asking them in small group, I was like, I just felt so worried about coming to that retreat because I didn't know my Bible. And I was like, I really don't even know where to start.
Right.
And they told me that to try a Baptist church and in my area. And then um, the person I knew that goes to a Baptist church was Sarah Ezel. And I reached out to her and I was like, hey, where is church? Because I didn't our church is kind of tucked away
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
road. You don't drive through that road unless you're going to church
Right.
there.
Right.
And so I was like, I'll try this and try small group. And then when I was there, I knew a lot of people when I walked into that church that just felt really welcoming. And then I joined small because they were like, you need to go not just for Sunday service. You need to find a small group,
Right.
you know, to learn more that will help you. And like that made just all the difference in my faith. It went from just visiting church and hearing their service to actually having a relationship and, you know,
Right.
supporting your faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Hope Mommies, like what going back to that really quick, what is like, how is it the same time every year? Like how do we connect people if that's something that they are interested in learning more about?
Yeah, so they have Hope Mommies on Facebook. And then I believe they have a retreat in November and February or March, maybe. It's twice a year now. It's in Giddings, Texas. There's scholarships available too. Like, I think it's like $370 for a weekend retreat. And that includes all your food, everything. But they do offer scholarships if you apply on there to go to a retreat if you just can't afford it. And there's also their Facebook page. You can attend virtually for free.
Oh, cool.
Hope groups, and they do hope groups all throughout the year. Different. I think each month there's a new Hope group, and they'll do a study online as well.
So you've mentioned to me before something about a hope box. Tell me about was that one of the things that just really what is a hope box? Explain that a
So
bit.
Hope Box is, I have one over here, but it's a box full of comforting items as well as information about Hope Mommies, where different chapters that might be in your area in Texas. It has in there a Bible for everyone, and then just a lot of information about grief support. And then, there's some coffee, some cute candles in there, just some comforting playlists, Spotify playlists, all these different things. And I did not receive a Hope Box until I went to my first retreat. And so I didn't know anything about them. But since then, I have done, 3 or 4 Hope Box gatherings for the community because I wanted other moms. I can't describe how terrible it is to be in the hospital and deliver your baby and know that they're not either going to live or you lose your baby. But the worst part is you're in a labor and delivery floor and you hear all these babies crying around you that have just been born. And there's nothing. You go home with nothing. There's no, for me, there was no resources. There was nothing about, there's this support group. You just go home with your empty womb and your empty arms. Like, it's another day.
Right.
And when your whole world ended, you know, and it was just terrible. And so since then, learning about the Hope Boxes, I have our hospital in Port Lavaca stocked with them so that if any mom, even if they're haven't experienced or they're not there actively experiencing about a miscarriage or infant loss or something, and they speak to their doctor. My mother-in-law is a director up there, and she has talked to all of the departments. If we have a patient that's experiencing and talking about their grief or loss, even if they didn't experience it today, it's a free resource to the hospital to give this patient a Hope Box. It could have happened a year ago,
Yeah.
and they're talking about it, and it's like that was just something that was never given to me.
Right.
And so our community now has it. A lot of people in our community know that if they don't have one or wasn't given one, they can reach out and I can get them a box. You can also send on through Hope Mommies if you know of a friend anywhere in the world and you want to, your hospital doesn't have it and you want to send them a Hope Box. You can put their information in there, and the Hope Mommies support thing will send it wherever it is
Oh, I
to your
love that.
friend.
So what would you say was one thing that gave you hope in all of this, in the tragedy of your loss? Was there anything that sticks out that gave you a little bit of hope during that process?
I would say the Hope Boxes because it's really a way of bringing light to the dark
Mm-hmm.
of what, such a terrible experience came of something good
Mm-hmm.
just to the community. I hate that. I hate that though. I
Yes.
really hate that. It had to be me in a way that this came about to have support for women here
Mm-hmm.
in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm glad that to me it brings purpose to my son's life. And it's really hard. It's really hard for women when you lose a child. It's like I don't get to say Nixon's name often. I don't get to write his name. You take all this time picking out your child's name,
Mm-hmm.
and writing it on their backpack and their school lunchbox and their forms and doctor's things, and it's so small to people who don't get it, but to me and other moms who experience the loss of their kid,
Mm-hmm.
when I get to prepare a Hope Box, and on the box it's usually Hope Box is another thing, is usually prepared by women who have experienced a loss or love one who's there in support of.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you open the box, it'll say this box was in memory of or in honor of Nixon Stringo. So it's just for me to give,
Oh,
back.
that's sweet. I
Yeah,
love
to
that.
make purpose.
Yeah. So, what do you think some of the things are that taught you, like that God taught you through that experience? As hard as it was, what do you think?
That I needed community.
Mm,
I was definitely did not realize how lost I was
mm-hmm.
and how alone and isolated I was before that. And it's like I have family and they reached out and stuff, but it's also another thing that when your family's also grieving with you.
Right.
And so it's, I couldn't talk to, especially, like you want to talk to your mom. I couldn't really talk to my mom because when I talked to her, she just, she was there when it happened. And when they told me and Drake wasn't, he had left for a moment to go get some clothes to come back to the hospital. And so she was with me when they told me the news. And she said, she'll never, ever forget that scream. It was like the most, you know,
Right.
you'll never remember it. And so for her, it's like, not only is she so upset about the loss of her grandson, but just seeing me in so much pain as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a community of women who know what you're going through, but they're not necessary. And of course, they're upset for you. We all get very attached. These are lasting, lifelong friendships that I've made.
Right.
But even separate from Hope Mommies, with my own church family, I just never had that in my life.
Right. So it's like you had to open up and get vulnerable about the things you were struggling with so that you can find the community and realize you were not alone.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
amazing. Okay, so one last thing before we wrap up is how, if anybody that listens or watches this, if they would like to get a hold of you, if they went through something similar, what would be the best way for them to reach you?
Um, they could email me. My email address is cstringo@yahoo.com. So
Okay.
pretty simple.
I'll put it in the description box as well so that they can reach you if they need to. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate it, even though it was hard. I know it was hard, but thank you for being here.